Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I'll repeat that you will hear a different message today than you have heard before in this Infinite Way work, because I have asked you here today not to receive something but to give something. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make many, many demands on you today and other days that we will meet here together. The reason that you are here and not the other members of the morning or evening classes is that you have been in the Infinite Way work the longest period of time. All of you have been in this work between 5 and nearly 10 years. And some few were with me even before the Infinite Way began. And each one of you have been taking some part in Infinite Way work, that is, become connected with the activity of the message of the Infinite Way. And it is for that reason that you are here and not the others. In the evening closed class, there are those, many of whom are with us for the first time. And they are here to get whatever we have to give, share, impart. There are those in the morning class who are here to further develop themselves in learning how the Infinite Way is lived and how it is practiced, more especially of its application to the healing work. But your years of study have brought you to the place where you know the letter of truth as it is given in the message of the Infinite Way, and to some degree you have attained the spirit of truth. In some measure you have attained the mind that was in Christ Jesus, and for this reason you have attracted to you people out in the world wanting to know something of the spiritual life. And so you are either conducting tape recordings or you are doing healing work, or both, and in other ways teaching the message of the Infinite Way in one way or another. Now, as you have seen, we do not authorize anybody to be an Infinite Way worker. We do not authorize practitioners. We do not ordain teachers or ministers. So that if you are in the work, you are in it because your consciousness has been developed to the place where people are being attracted to you. I haven't sent your people to you, as you so well know, and I have no intention ever of sending anybody to anybody. For the reason that our principal revelation is that it is the state of your own individual consciousness that determines your place and position in life. And so, if you have leanings toward the spiritual and toward work in the spiritual, it will have to be your own devotion to it that will develop your consciousness and attract to you those whom you can serve. In the past, some of you have depended on organizations to supply you with patients or students, or listings, or ordinations, or diplomas. But when you come to the Infinite Way, you find that we have none of those things to give you. You have to demonstrate your own way in this work, and you can only demonstrate it in the degree of your attainment of that mind that was also in Christ Jesus, spiritual consciousness. I can't do that for you, I can merely be a teacher of the Word, and I can impart to those who are willing to receive it some measure of that consciousness. But I can't go out and build you a practice or a student body or a reading public for your writing. You have to do that for yourself. Now, you already know this because you're in the work and you know how little help I've been to you except in the degree of spiritual impartation. You know that humanly I don't lift my finger for you and wouldn't. I would rather you'd fail than succeed through my efforts or my recommendations. The sooner you get back into bookkeeping or clerking or dressmaking, the better. If you cannot succeed on the degree of your spiritual unfoldment. And the infinite way is in the same position. It would be better not to have practitioners or teachers than to have those who are still dependent on human modes and means for their advancement or their success. It was a strange thing that after a long time in the business world, 22 years, nearly all of which had been nominally successful, that when I came to the actual point of going into the practice for healing work, I was broke. I was without funds and had to begin from scratch. All I had was $250, which I borrowed on my First World War bonus. By that time, I had lost all my friends and relatives who were assured of my insanity, and so would in no wise help me. And that was the beginning of my work. And at that time, I did not have one single patient paying me any money. I had several patients I was helping, but they knew I was in the business world and probably were sure I was still prosperous, and so were giving nothing for their spiritual help. And so I went into the practice with this $250 and nothing behind me but God, and had to build up and develop from that point. And as some of you know, before I was through, I had one of the most successful works in that line of work. Well, perhaps it is coincidental, but just before the infinite way began, all that I had earned and saved in my healing work was taken from me. So that when I came into the infinite way, my total assets were well under $3,000. And of that, it cost $1,500 to bring out the first infinite way books. And so you see that when I say to you that you must begin with nothing but God, it's because I have twice had the experience and have found that it's practical and possible and can be done. Now, when I came into the Christian Science practice, I had no patience of the Christian Science field, but it grew. But when I came into the infinite way, I lost my Christian Science practice. And so the infinite way has had to evolve out of that. So again, I can say to you from experience, it can be done, and not only it can be done, it must be done. Now notice this. From the very beginning of the infinite way, I have asked you for nothing. Every bit of financing has been done by the same mind that wrote the book, The Infinite Way. And it has paid every ounce of its way, whether in the publication of books, whether in travels, whether in hotel bills, airplane rides, or whatnot. The consciousness that is the infinite way has provided for all of that, so that there has never been a need to ask anyone any time for even a single dollar. Now that condition still exists. Every activity, even these 3 trips around the world and 4 trips to Europe and 2 trips to South Africa, even that has all been financed without asking one single person for one single penny. And that will continue also. I'm merely reciting this to you, not for the purpose of raising funds, but for the purpose of telling you that the raising of funds must be done by the consciousness of the individual, and the consciousness of the individual must provide your support, your maintenance, and that of your spiritual activity, whether you have a tape recorder, whether you have a room in a hotel, whether you have a whole suite in a building, or whether you decide to travel the whole world. The consciousness of truth within you must provide for it. You see that? You are all one with God, but you must be more and more consciously one with God, so that the infinity and allness of God may find expression through you, and that you can also say, I have no friends or relatives to support me. I have only the mind that was in Christ Jesus, and I have proven that it is abundant unto every situation. Now, from the beginning of the message of the Infinite Way and Joel Goldsmith have been synonymous. Every bit of the work has been carried on by Joel Goldsmith. Every activity has been financed through the consciousness of Joel Goldsmith. All of the writing, all of the publishing, all of the this, that, and the other thing. And Joel Goldsmith has not only not asked financial aid, but any other kind of aid, spiritual or anything else. Now comes a new era. You who have been identified with this work as students for the last 5 to 10 years, you who have been identified with the public ministry of the Infinite Way, you are now being asked by me to identify yourselves in your own consciousness as a part of the Infinite Way activity, to recognize yourself as a part of it, and to realize this, that doesn't mean merely making your own demonstration of your support in your hometown. It means of identifying yourself with a world activity to which you owe your spiritual wisdom, prayers, support, spiritual, mental, moral, financial. In other words, you have accepted this as a way of life. You've identified yourself publicly with it. Now unite with me. And let us face this entire situation together and realize that it's too big now for Joel Goldsmith to wander around the world alone. It's too big for Joel Goldsmith now to have to do all the metaphysical work for 60 cities, for 60 groups that are meeting in 60 cities, or 100 groups meeting in 60 cities. It's too much for Joel Goldsmith to do all the metaphysical work and all the praying for all of the literature and all of the letters and all of the tape recordings and all of the things. Now the time has come for somebody to unite and say, look, this is no longer your infinite way, this is our infinite way. And no longer feel that you are 20 separate people. You are now a part of a oneness and a wholeness called the Infinite Way, and begin to recognize your responsibility as that. Heretofore, you have been responsible only for what happened in Calgary, and you for what happened in Washington, D.C., and you for what happened in Louisville, Kentucky, and you for what happened in Victoria, B.C., but that can't be anymore. That's just a lot of separate people making individual demonstrations, but the Infinite Way is beyond that. The Infinite Way is now a world activity. And you may operate in one city temporarily, but you are not localized in that city. And it's going to become necessary for you to do as much metaphysical work for Cape Town, South Africa, as it is for your hometown. It is going to be as much a part of your duty and obligation to do spiritual work every day for Joel Goldsmith as it is for your own individual self or your child. I have been doing it for you, that you know. I have helped you to, through spiritual means, to get organized in your cities and your communities and in your work. Now you have to do it for me. And yet not for me, for the infinite way, as if I weren't even on earth. Because the infinite way will be here when I'm no longer visible. But it will be visible as you. And then in its turn, your children or your students or those who are now your patients. Yes, it has been told to me that I will not be able to travel all around the world forever. And that may be true. But that doesn't mean that traveling around the world isn't going to continue to be necessary. It's going to become more necessary. And when you stop to think that the infinite way, well, just let me rehearse a little for you. The new edition of the Infinite Way in America, I think, is the 7th edition. And in England, it's the 3rd edition. That makes 10 editions of the Infinite Way between America and England. Living the Infinite Way is in its 2nd, getting ready for its 3rd. Spiritual interpretation of Scripture has just come out, I think, in its 7th printing. Already there are, in addition to American and British editions, there are, this is 7th printing. There are translations in Dutch and in German for those countries. And in process right now, Swedish and Spanish. And where it will end, nobody knows. Now, all of you have wondered why I don't come to Cleveland or Detroit or Chicago or San Francisco or Kansas City. But I suppose you can realize now what my dilemma is, having all the cities of the United States and Canada and England and Sweden and Holland and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand. I can't be in all of them at one time. I can't even be in all of them one at a time because there's too many to make the rounds of, even if I came once in 3 years and never went home. Now, it must be clear to you that the day is coming when some of our students must be prepared to carry this message forward, to get into the work in one way or another. And in order to do that, you not only have to know the letter of truth perfectly, so that you never mislead anyone as to what the message of the infinite way is, but you have to live so deeply in the Spirit that the Spirit will draw to you everything necessary for your unfoldment. And so, from that standpoint, you're going to be asked today, you are being asked, to live more closely attuned to Spirit than you ever have in your lives before, because greater demands are going to be made upon you. Some of you here know that I spoke on the radio in Chicago, and that a record was set that has never before or since been equaled, and that the opportunity was given me to go on television and radio, and that I refused. Now, do you know why? Because have I just mentioned once that we are a healing ministry, I would have had more requests for healing than I could take care of. And I had not sufficient students prepared to jump in and do healing work so that I could have said, good, divide these requests for help up among 25 or 50 of you, because I didn't have 25 or 50 capable of jumping in and doing healing work on a sufficient basis to be assured that they could do it. And you know that in this work, healing work, is a decoy. Everybody believes they need healing and want healing. It isn't true. They want God. And so when they come to us seeking healing and supply, we say to them, silver and gold have I none. Such as I have give I unto thee, which is the word of God, Spirit, truth. And so our work really is turning their request for healing into spiritual consciousness. Well, from the sale of the writings, the possibility that radio may be ahead of us, I can say to you that we need workers, consecrated workers, people who are willing to leave their nets, leave the world, and live inside it. You don't have to neglect your families. You don't have to run away from them or desert them. You don't have to give up your family obligations or duties. You have to perform those things for Caesar that Caesar demands. But you must reserve within yourself that part of your consciousness which must be reserved for the Spirit, and you must be ready to break enough with your social obligations and so forth to be prepared to meet the spiritual demands that are made upon you. And so this is in the nature of telling you that you who have been identified with the work must first of all be prepared for greater demands being made upon you. Even some of the healing work today that comes to me through the mail I can't take care of, and I am referring them to those teachers or practitioners in the local field. Wherever I have any assurance that there is someone capable of healing, I am referring my calls to those. The others I can't until I have some assurance that when they're called upon they will be able to respond, because I would then be turning someone over for bread that may be given a stone. And so I do not recommend any of our workers until I have some way of having an assurance that they have left the world enough to be able to do healing work. All right, that's that. Now, you came into this room, 20-odd individuals living in certain cities and being responsible for your local work. But when you go out united in me, united in this infinite way, and you are as responsible for my success as I am for yours. You are as responsible for the infinite way success in Bulgaria as you are in your hometown. And if, as looks possible, we are called into Russia, it will be your function spiritually to go into Russia with me, or any other place that this call comes. You have got to consider yourself a part of me and a part of my activity, or a part of the activity of those who continue in this work. Everyone in this room must rise above the human traits of envy, jealousy, self-seeking, self-interest, and when they're tempted with those things, meet them within themselves, realize them for what they are, temptations to obstruct this work. Now, as you know, God raised up Mr. Starkey here to fill in this New York work and manage it and organize it and do everything necessary to the fulfilling of this work out of his other career. Evidently, when God is ready for a work to be done, he has a way of raising up somebody to do it, even if he has to insult him, as I insulted Mr. Starkey at one time by telling him that his career as an actor was all over and he'd have to give up the idea of it, which he didn't like. But God has a way of doing those things, do you think? And so it is, as you know, that Emma Lindsay over here has taken part in every one of the activities at headquarters and taken over the management of them. When the opportunity came for somebody to be raised up, somebody was raised up to do the work. The only thing necessary for the success is the consecration and devotion to it. In the same way, years ago, I really think that it's impossible for anybody to believe this. I was called into the Louisville, Kentucky field because of a feud in a Christian Science church, and I was the practitioner in that feud. Seems ridiculous to believe that that's true now, but it was so. And out of it, what has happened? Well, just look at the wonderful work we have down there in Kentucky and understand that, again, people whom I never knew, Mrs. Phelps here, Mr. Martin over there, never knew, never heard of, didn't know they were in existence, were raised up in that field to do this work. And how beautifully they have carried on can only be known by those who know how the work has developed there. And if you want to know a little bit about it, I'll tell you that Mr. Martin invited me a couple of years ago to Louisville to talk to his students because there were about 30. But when we got to the hall, there were 108. Now, those are the things that have happened in this work. One place after another, God has raised up seed, people whom I never knew, had no way of knowing. Matter of fact, over here, our little Cincinnati girl. We had nobody in Cincinnati, but we had two girls out in Hawaii, and they decided their sister in Cincinnati ought to know something about the infinite way. Well, they were right. She's been conducting the work there ever since and developed it into a very healthy activity. Do you see what I'm getting at? That when God has a need, God raises up seed to carry on this work. I don't, and you won't. But by your spiritual activity, you will help raise up seed all over this globe to do it, whether I'm on the scene or not. You will still raise up seed if you are not jealous of one another or envious or wanting to sit in high places. Yes, it's true. You've often heard the accusation that I have pets, and you've never heard me deny it. I have pets. There isn't any question about that. But look around and see who my pets are. They are the people who are devoting themselves in one way or another to the unfoldment of God. They're not devoting themselves to me. They're devoting themselves to God. Some of them I see at very rare intervals. Some I hear from more often, some less. But they're my pets just the same. And they're my pets in proportion to their devotion to a spiritual message and to the activity of God. No other way. Nobody gets themselves into this room by pull. Nobody can pay money to get into this room. Nobody can come in here because they're young and blonde. I think I've grown beyond young blonde. But anybody, anywhere in the world can get into this close circle that's around me by their devotion to this message. And many of you have seen that in operation in many cities. You know it's true. All right? First now, you realize that as you leave this room, you go out as a part of the infinite way itself. Not merely the infinite way in your locality, but the infinite way in its infinity. The infinite way anywhere and everywhere. By the lesson this morning, you must know that I am omnipresent. But I am you. Therefore, the I of you is omnipresent. So you can be just as effective in Africa and Europe as you can be in your hometown if you will but devote some period of your day to being a worldwide individual. That rests with you. Now then, that entails this. First of all, in recognizing yourself now as a part of the infinite way, please realize that the infinite way is an activity that is getting worldwide and therefore requires worldwide support. Include the infinite way in your financial program. But far and above that, remember this. This is a spiritual activity. It doesn't require a lot of money. It requires a lot of spiritual devotion. That's what we need. Spiritual support, united support. It needs this group of 20-odd people to sit down and know that each other is being successful in their field. Not that you are being successful in your city. That's a lot of nonsense. You'll never be successful in your city, separate and apart from everybody's success in their cities. And you'll never be successful if I'm not successful in a worldwide way. And I can't be successful by myself except in proportion to your success in your community. If you are healing in your community, then the infinite way is a success. If you are not healing in your community, the infinite way is a failure in your community. And if you all fail to heal in your community, there's no infinite way left on earth. So remember that the only existence the infinite way has is in your healing capacity. My healing capacity has raised us up to this degree. My healing capacity has raised you up to this degree. But as the Master told us, if I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. So that I, as a person, cannot be here to raise it up all over the world and for all time. And so you unite. And in turn, your students will unite. And always remember this. All of the healing movements that have died, and even those that are existing today are dead. They have died for lack of healing. If you travel with the United States or the world, you will find what I have found. Christian Science is successful in those churches where there are successful Christian Science healers. And where there are no Christian Science healers, the church is a flop and a failure. There are some churches that are packed to the doors today, and there are some that are empty. It has nothing to do with the teaching of Christian Science. It has to do with the individual healing capacity of the practitioners. The same thing is true in our work. You could make the Infinite Way boom in your community until you would think it was Billy Graham, if you were doing the healing work. But the Infinite Way will never be heard of in your community except in proportion to your healing work. Why? Because the healing work is the visible evidence of your invisible spiritual development. I got that from the Master. He was asked, art thou he that should come? John the Baptist doubts it because he's in prison and nobody's coming to rescue him. And he begins to question, is this fellow I introduced, is he really the Christ? But Jesus doesn't say yes or no. He says, go show John what things you have seen. The sick are healed. The blind have their eyes open. The deaf have their ears open. The dead are raised. To the poor the gospel is preached. Well, do you think we're any different today? No. If you ask us, is the Infinite Way true? What's the use of saying yes? Can you demonstrate it? Can you prove it? Can you bring healing? Can you bring comforting to those who mourn? Can you free the slave of alcohol from his false desire? Can you free the slave of sensuality from their desire? Well, that's the only thing that will tell whether or not the Infinite Way is true. And so remember this. The question must come to you inevitably. Is the Infinite Way something for today, or is it something for eternity? And I can give you the answer. The Infinite Way is only for that length of time in which there is a healing consciousness to be individually expressed in the world. When the Infinite Way no longer heals, it will be out of existence. So far, it has developed around the world through my individual efforts. It has sprung up, as many of you have seen, in city after city where I have individually done healing work. But that does not go on forever. You are in the position now of carrying that on in your community. It is you who have to prove the Infinite Way, not me. I have proven it to you and to some people in your community. You have to carry on the burden of proof. If you can do it, the Infinite Way will flourish in your community. When you can't do it, if someone else isn't raised up, it will no longer flourish. The whole activity is dependent on the healing ministry, because the healing ministry in this age is the evidence of God with us. It's the evidence of our spiritual attainment. Once you can show to people that there is a healing power and that there is a comforting power and a supplying power, then they are ready to take the next step and align themselves with that power which is God. You see that? All right? So as you succeed in your individual communities, it is my function and those of all of us to help each other spiritually prosper in each other's community, to know that the same healing consciousness that is operating in your community is operating in all the communities all over the world. To know that as God is the individual identity and capacity of you, so God is the individual identity and capacity of every student of the infinite way all over the globe. But you can't take that for granted, because I'm going to tell you an age-old secret. God isn't of any use to anybody, and Christ isn't of any use to anybody. It is only the realization of God or the realization of Christ that does the work. I'll tell you a secret. God is omnipresent. God is equally present all over the world, but all over the world are steeped in sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, wars, and rumors of wars and fears of wars. So God is no good to them, and Christ is no good to them, and never will be. It isn't God, it isn't Christ. It's God realized, Christ realized, that does the work. That is why if you go to Jesus Christ, you get an instantaneous healing. If you go to the disciples, it may take 2 or 3 treatments before you get it. If you go to one of our practitioners, you may get a wonderful result, and another one you may get long, drawn-out result. What's the difference? God is the same, Christ is the same, and the infinite way message is the same, but your degree of realization isn't the same. And so it is that the secret of our work is this. God realized, Christ realized, is the Savior unto every situation. Without that realization, the fact that there is a God is of no benefit to anyone. Men are rotting away with disease, poverty, wars, and fears of more wars to come. And yet God is. And God is preached in all the churches. Hasn't stopped bombs being thrown. Hasn't stopped infection and contagion. Oh, no. It isn't God that does these things. God is in his holy temple, performing its work. But it benefits us only in proportion to our realization of it. And so it is that your individual realization of Christhood will result in healings in your community. And in proportion as you waste your time on something else, in that proportion will your community and the other communities not benefit. And so we start with asking of you, first of all, I don't think so much asking you as telling you that you are now united. I don't think that any of you have the capacity to refuse or to withdraw. I don't think that I would have been led to speak to you if the time hadn't come when it was too late for you to back out. Personally, I am a little bashful about asking for things for fear I'd be refused. That's why I was never a good salesman. I couldn't ask a buyer for an order. I was always afraid of being refused, and I don't like to be refused. So I think I was led to wait until you haven't the capacity to refuse. So there's no use asking you to unite. I think I'll have to tell you, you have been united. You are a part of a worldwide activity, and more than this, you are the first 20 in the entire history of the infinite way work to be united. Before you there was none. After you there will be others, but there will never be another first 20. Do you understand that? Do you understand the responsibility that entails? Because in later times, less will be demanded of people. You know, in the early days of Christian Science, the members were so enthused and had such responsibilities that they got together, worked like Trojans, and they built $1 million churches, $2 million churches, $2.5 million churches. Just a little handful did that. Now all the rest of the people come in and put in a dime to sit in them. If you'd ask them to build $1 million church, they'd think you were being commercial. You see that? It is in the same way. But things will be demanded of you that will not be demanded of later infinite way students, because your united consciousness will have raised up this temple of the infinite way. And the rest of the world will merely have to be invited to walk in and partake of that which your consciousness built. So the greater responsibility always rests on pioneers. And I think it would be better for the world if all these religious teachings died every generation and let some new pioneers be raised up so that they could unite in building these edifices, even if they were material edifices, just for the point of showing that the Word can become flesh. Do you see that? All right. That now is the first part of what I've asked you here to hear. And the second part goes much further. In 1950, the voice told me to stop work on the 1st of October and to prepare for a new work. Personal things interfered, and the voice told me to wait until 1952. And again, personal matters interfered, and I was told to wait until 1953, and then I was told to wait until further notice. And I received that notice in January, to begin now a new work. And it started in Honolulu. I started it there with Mr. Nowell and Emma Lindsay. And then later to that, Mr. Starkey came down and joined us, and then 3 other students in Honolulu. And that consists of our entire group there that started this new work. And as we were doing this new work, the impulsion was given to me to bring it to our students in New York. And so you can see, while I didn't ask any one of you to come here, you can see why you were brought here. It was necessary that all who are the basis of our work be here to unite in this work. However, if I invited you here, that would have been a human activity, and you may not have been meant even to do the work. And so I wouldn't tell anybody about it. And I said, whom God brings to us, whom God brings into this meeting, those ones God has designated to carry on the work. I don't have to tell you what a disgraceful thing it is that whereas in the beginning Jesus fed the multitudes, healed the multitudes, and made the demonstration of supply for his followers. In the early days of Christian Science, Mrs. Eddy bore the entire brunt of making the demonstration for her followers. Healings, supply, money, everything necessary. She didn't ask the field to support her. She supported the field. In the infinite way, at no time have we asked the field to support us, but we have supported the field, spiritually, in some cases even financially. And in every case, financially borne the activity of the thing. But you want to know something? That the church reverses all that now and says to its people, you must support me. You must support the church. You must support the ministry. You know why? Because the only thing that governs the church is the same thing that governs government, material sense. They don't acknowledge that they have enough spiritual sense to support you. They ask you to support them. But we can't be guilty of that. Our only support for each other is in the degree of our spiritual enlightenment. Don't ever ask your patients or students to support you. You support them spiritually. You support them, and if necessary, even with the finances. Not taking the burden of their living on your shoulder, but being a temporary help to them. If they ask for bread, don't give them a stone. If they say they're hungry, don't give them merely a prayer. Give them something to eat and some clothing. Prove by your own demonstration that you not only can, through the Christ, be fed and clothed yourself, but that you can feed and clothe the multitudes who are led to you. Don't have to ask for support. You be the one to give the support until such time as you unite like this and say, we are one. And even then, don't ever depend on anyone, not even your students, for support. Depend only on your Christ. Now, this material sense is responsible for our world as it is today. As long as we are human beings or live in a world of human beings, there is going to be unfair competition, lying, advertising, wars, rumors of wars. And this can only end when spiritual sense takes the place of material sense. You can illustrate that in this room. In the degree that there is material sense in this room, there is greed, envy, jealousy, malice, lust, seeking, self-seeking, so forth and so on. In the degree that there is no material sense, but only spiritual sense, there is love, sharing, cooperation, healing, giving. You see that? Now, supposing we here were to agree that every one of the 10 Commandments could be removed from this room, and that we could get along without any laws against stealing or any laws against adultery or any laws against this, that, or the other thing, that we don't need them, that we're not here to get anything from each other, but if anything to share and give, cooperate. Well, that would be spiritual sense. Now then, when spiritual sense, spiritual consciousness envelops this globe, that is when there will be no more wars, no more poverty, no more ignorance, no more fear. You are all familiar with the fact that on page 40 of The Infinite Way, there is this passage that spiritual consciousness destroys material sense, destroys the bondage to material sense, breaks up material ties, so that we have no obligations to each other of any material nature. Our only obligations to love one another. You have also heard me refer to our work as a spiritual underground. Well, now I'm here to tell you that since January this has been in operation consciously around the globe. When you go home, you will call to yourself the 1 or 2 or 3 students whom you consider to be the outstanding spiritual students in your group. You will call unto you that 1, 2, or 3 whom you feel have so far left their nets that if you say to them, you will have to come to my home once a day, 6 days every week, and if you have the opportunity, Saturday, Sunday also, 7 times a week. Regardless of what other obligations you may have, I have to see you in my home or in my office every single day of the week. Don't ask anyone else. Don't ask anyone whose obligations and duties are such that they would say, oh, I would love to do it, but I can't. Don't let yourself get slapped in the face with that. You want only if it's 1 in your community. If there are 3, fine. If there are 5, still better. But be sure they are people who are devoted students of the Infinite Way, who are not mixing themselves up with Christian Science, unity, New Thought, and the Infinite Way, and thinking of themselves as being on this path. They aren't. You want, as I want in this room, only those who are dedicating themselves to the Infinite Way. So I want you to have in your room, for this purpose, only those whom you feel have left other teachings and are dedicated to spiritual living through the message of the Infinite Way. Now, I don't mean there aren't other ways of dedicating yourself to spiritual living, but I'm not interested in those at this moment. I'm interested in those who are dedicating themselves to spiritual living through the Infinite Way, and it's for this purpose. When they unite with you once a day, you ought to realize this. We're not interested in demonstrating peace on earth. We're not interested in demonstrating prosperity for any nation or for the world. We're not interested in demonstrating anything for anybody. We come together for one purpose, to sit in the silence and realize Christ. Christ omnipresent, omniactive in human consciousness that covers the whole globe. You sit in that silence until you achieve your click, until you achieve your realization of the presence. When you have realized it, you will then realize that the Christ, realized in your consciousness, is now operative and operating in individual consciousness throughout the globe. Those who have died and gone on, those who are on earth, and those who have not yet been born. Do you see that? Now you can suggest spiritualizing those who are on earth because they're going to pass off and the next generation is going to be as bad as we were. No, no. You are to sit in the silence until you realize Christ, until you have the feeling of the very presence of Christ in you. Then when you have realized that, you will realize that my realization of the Christ makes the Christ available in human consciousness throughout the globe, past, present, and future. Do you not see that if Christ were active in your consciousness and mine, there couldn't be a sin, disease, or death in the room? Do you not see that? Do you not see that if one person sat in this chair and had a realization of the Christ, that everybody in the room would feel it? You have seen that. You've seen it not only in our work, but surely you've seen it in Christian Science work when one of the very spiritually minded lecturers is on the platform. It's just full of healings. Just full of healings. When the others are on there, nothing happens. See that? The same thing is true here. You have all seen in groups where we had wonderful healings when I was on the platform. You've all seen wonderful healings in our classwork. That's just with one individual realizing the Christ. Now we're to think when two or more are gathered together and realize the Christ, and realize that if there are 10 righteous men in a city, what would happen? The whole city would be saved. You see that? Now, we're not going to demonstrate anything for anybody, and we're not interested in whether the world is at peace or at war temporarily, or in poverty or in lack. What we are interested in is that we individually attain a Christ realization, an actual awareness of the presence of God. Then, having attained it, realize that the Christ realized in our consciousness is omnipresent and omniactive in the consciousness of individuals throughout the globe, past, present, and future. And you will find that that realized Christ will dispel material sins. Just as a practitioner realizing spiritual activity in his consciousness removes the materiality from the patient, resulting in their healing, so does the realized Christ in my consciousness remove even the desire for sin, disease, and death in another consciousness. So is that with you. Now, before this trip is over, just think, before this week is over, we will send 20 people out into 20 cities, realizing the Christ every single day of the week, and realizing it not merely for themselves or the infinite way, but for human consciousness, past, present, and future. We may even set free those that are in torment on the other side of the grave. We may even set free those who would come to earth as new babes, stillborn, crippled, deformed, mentally or physically. We may set them free. What the action is, or may be, of this realized Christ is so vast that no one is yet in a position to know it, except that it has been given to me to do this work and to pass it on to you to do this work. Need I say to you this is secret? Need I say that it's never to be spoken of to anybody, except the one or two that you call unto yourself, and that nobody else is to know about it? You will not to write anybody about it or tell anybody that it is a spiritual underground. We don't want to be thought madmen and madwomen. We don't want the law to think that we've gone crazy and are going to interfere. We don't want the church to believe that we're trying to destroy it. We're not interested in the church whether it lives or dies. They're apt to get the impression that we'd like to hurry its death. We don't have to. It's doing a good job for itself. Now then, and not the church will die out as an institution. The nature of the church will die, and it will be reborn spiritually. You know, when I was in England, the Congregational Church of England sanctioned spiritual healing and set aside a sum of money for any of its ministers who wished to study spiritual healing to study it. And I had the privilege of being for 4 hours with 2 ministers who were interested. And one of them is beginning the study and practice of spiritual healing in the Congregational Church of England. Brother Mandus is working with many over there in the Church of England and the Congregational Church also who are beginning to take up this work, so forth and so on. So you see that it isn't that the church will ever be destroyed, but the materialistic nature of the church will be destroyed so that Christ will be raised up inside the church. And the church will become a healing temple. And it makes no difference whether it's the Hebrew church or Protestant or Catholic. In time, every church will become a center for healing, which means a center for bringing Christ realized into individual consciousness. There are loads of ministers interested in that. I can tell you of one in the United States who is a very well-known Protestant minister who is working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies of Infinite Way writings among hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of his students and patients. See that? That's the way it's going inside the church as well as outside the church. Now, there are some things that are too sacred to talk about. There are some people, friends of mine, mystics, who have asked me to write a book on my own inner spiritual life, and I've always refused. The reason is that what takes place inside of me is something so sacred I couldn't tell. I don't know if I could tell it to my mother, and my mother has been my closest pal. It's a thing that I can't talk about. When I was in England this last trip, I was awakened early in the morning, and God gave me 2 articles, one called The Monastic Life and one called The Mystic Life. And do you know that I have never been able to publish them or print them? I hesitate. I draw back at putting such a thing where the unillumined thought can tread on it. But it's going to be published in England. Now, that is the way you are to consider this work that we are doing, this group of 20-odd who constitute now this backbone of the Infinite Way, sacred and therefore secret. Let nobody know it but the 1 or 2 that you invite to partake in it, and please be very sure that they are dedicated to the Infinite Way message. Because you find it very embarrassing if sometime they break away from you and then go outside and start talking about this thing, this newly conceived babe which hasn't been born yet, which we're still carrying in our spiritual womb. We certainly don't want the world banging up against it and banging at it. Let us prove it before we talk about it. I already have seen evidence, and so has Mrs. Lindsay, and so has Mr. Nowell, so has Mr. Starkey. They have seen evidence of what this will do in the world and how far-reaching it is, and how many in far places have responded to what we have already done in Honolulu. Someday you will see what happens through your realization of this, and it will astound you. But until you do, why talk about it when you don't know yet whether or not it will work, except that something within you says, I know it's right. But wait for a little more proof. And even then, don't be too free with it. This that I'm giving you today is the most sacred thing in my life. And if you violate it, you're not only violating your own sacredness, but mine. I'm trusting you with my pearl. I'm giving you the pearl that has been given to me. Treat it as a pearl. It's not for your sake, for mine. And do not permit anyone who comes to you to discuss it with their husbands or their wives or anyone else who may be close to them. This is a sacred work, and it must be kept a secret work. until such time as, well, as it becomes possible to speak of it. But this isn't the time. This is the time for demonstration of the Christ, realization of the Christ. Don't think for a moment that you need a big group. Please be just as happy to have one person if you have confidence in their spiritual integrity. Don't endanger your work by having one extra one for the sake of numbers, or 100 for the sake of numbers. Don't do that. And I'll tell you another reason. It's as useless as having 20 practitioners work on one case. You only need one if it's a dedicated one. It's all right to have 20 if you're sure that all 20 are equally dedicated. But the mere fact of having 20 instead of one won't help your case one single bit. And so, this is a good afternoon and an aloha and a caution to keep this sacred and secret.